Have you ever been judged for how you look? Have you ever felt like you didn't belong somewhere because of the color of your skin or the clothes you wear? This is a story about a woman who faced that very injustice and how she and her husband turned that experience into a force for change. Zora Phoenix possessed a quiet confidence that radiated from within. It wasn't the kind of confidence that screamed for attention with flashy jewelry or designer logos. Instead, it was a deep-seated assurance born from years of hard work, unwavering principles, and a genuine belief in her own worth. She moved through the world with a graceful ease, treating everyone she encountered with the same level of respect, regardless of their background or status. On this particular September morning, Zora found herself on Fifth Avenue, drawn to the sleek, minimalist storefront of Elysium Beauty. The luxury cosmetics store was known for its high-end skincare products, and Zora, always meticulous about what she put on her skin, was hoping to find a new illuminating serum for an event that evening. She wasn't looking to make a grand entrance. Dressed in dark wash jeans, a cream cashmere sweater, and comfortable leather flats, she blended in with the upscale surroundings without trying to stand out. Her only visible accessory was her wedding band, a subtle yet elegant piece that held more sentimental value than any diamond tiara. As she stepped inside Elysium Beauty, Zora was immediately struck by the store's opulent design. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow on the polished marble floors. Glass display cases showcased rows of meticulously arranged skincare products, each one looking like a precious artifact in a museum. Sales associates in crisp black uniforms glided between displays, offering personalized assistance to customers. But as Zora began to browse, she noticed something unsettling. Several white women entered the store after her, and each one was immediately greeted with enthusiasm and offered champagne or a personalized consultation. Zora, however, was met with silence. Sales associates walked past her without making eye contact, their attention seemingly focused on other, more desirable customers. At first, Zora tried to brush it off. Perhaps they were busy, she thought. Perhaps they simply hadn't seen her. But as the minutes ticked by, the pattern became undeniable. She was being ignored, deliberately overlooked. Finally, she made her way to the back of the store, where the most exclusive products were displayed. She was admiring a limited edition collection of skincare products housed in hand-blown glass containers when she felt a presence behind her. She turned to find a tall, impeccably dressed man with silver hair and icy blue eyes standing directly behind her. His name tag identified him as Alexander Whitfield, the general manager. His lips formed a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I help you find the exit?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "This isn't a museum for sightseers." Zora's blood ran cold. The implication was clear. She didn't belong here. She was an outsider, an interloper, someone who should be gawking from outside the windows instead of touching the precious merchandise. "Actually," Zora replied, her voice calm but firm, "I'm interested in purchasing this collection. I have an event this evening and wanted to try their new illuminating serum." Alexander's eyes narrowed, scanning her from head to toe with undisguised disapproval. His gaze lingered on her simple clothing, dismissing her as someone who couldn't possibly afford the products. "These products require a significant investment," he said, emphasizing the word significant as if speaking to a child. "Do you have proof of income? ID? How do I know you can afford these products? We've had issues with certain people coming in just to handle luxury items with no intention of purchase, and you look like one of them." The words hung in the air like poison, laced with prejudice and disdain. The term "certain people" was a thinly veiled reference to her race, a blatant attempt to make her feel unwelcome and inferior. The absurdity of the situation might have made Zora laugh under different circumstances. In her 15 years of shopping at luxury establishments around the world, she had never once been asked to prove her ability to pay. But this wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. Why should she have to prove herself worthy of basic respect? "I don't typically carry income statements when I shop," Zora replied, the slightest edge creeping in her voice. Nor do I believe your other customers are required to present financial documentation before making a purchase. She gestured discreetly toward the VIP area, where a white woman was being pampered with champagne and moisturizer samples. I haven't noticed you asking anyone else for their banking details today. Alexander's expression hardened, his fake politeness cracking to reveal the contempt beneath. He stepped closer, lowering his voice but increasing its venom. Listen, he hissed, these items cost more than you'd make in a year. Are you just here looking for handouts or Instagram photos? Because we're not a backdrop for your social media fantasies. He flicked his eyes to her phone, visible in the pocket of her jeans. Let me guess, you want to take selfies with products you can't afford to impress your followers? Or maybe you're hoping for free samples. We don't do handouts here, and we don't serve broke people like you. Each word was a deliberate cut, designed to make her feel small, to remind her that in his eyes, she didn't belong in this space. The store had grown quieter. Other customers were watching now, some with uncomfortable expressions, others with the satisfaction of witnessing someone they deemed an outsider being put in their place. Zora remained composed, though something flickered in her dark eyes. Not fear, but a quiet assessment, as though she were taking mental notes for future reference. Her mind raced through options: leave quietly, demand to speak to ownership, make a scene that would surely end up on social media, or simply purchase the items and prove him wrong. But there was a principle at stake. Why should she have to prove herself worthy of basic respect? Actually, she said, her voice calm, but carrying clearly in the now hushed store, I was planning to purchase the entire limited edition collection. All 6 products, totaling. She paused, doing the mental calculation, just over $20,000 with tax. Alexander laughed. Not a genuine laugh of amusement, but the cruel chuckle of someone who believes they've caught another in a lie. His eyes crinkled with malicious delight as he made a performance of looking around the store, his voice loud enough for others to hear, designed to make her the punchline of a joke everyone was in on except her. He raised his hand, beckoning to security. We have someone causing a disturbance, he announced. Another broke tourist wasting our time. Soon, 2 security guards approached from positions near the exits, both over 6 feet tall with black suits and earpieces. They moved towards them, converging on Zora from different angles as though she might be a threat rather than a potential customer. Please don't touch me, Zora said firmly, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms and executive decisions. I'll leave on my own. But they weren't interested in dignity. Each took one of her arms, lifting her slightly so her feet barely touched the floor as they marched her toward the exit. The humiliation was calculated, designed to be as public and shaming as possible. A spectacle and a warning to anyone else who might enter the store without fitting Alexander Whitfield's vision of who belonged. As they pushed Zora through the doors on a Fifth Avenue, she stumbled slightly but quickly regained her balance. With deliberate calmness, Zora straightened her sweater, smoothed a non-existent wrinkle from her jeans, took a deep breath, and lifted her shoulders back to perfect posture. Only then did she reach for her phone. Behind the floor-to-ceiling windows, Alexander and his staff watched as she dialed, perhaps expecting her to call a taxi or a friend to pick her up after such embarrassment. Perhaps they expected tears, a breakdown, or an angry tirade directed at the store. Zora gave them none of these satisfactions. She raised the phone to her ear, her voice shaking, but not from fear or humiliation. It was the controlled anger of someone who has witnessed injustice and is already calculating how to address it. Ethan, she said on the call to her husband. Ethan, she said on the call to her husband, her voice shaking not from fear or humiliation, but from the controlled anger of someone who has witnessed injustice and is already calculating how to address it. I'm fine, just shaken. No, don't do anything rash. She listened for a moment, then glanced back at the store, where Alexander still watched, arms crossed smugly across his chest, an emperor overseeing the banishment of someone he deemed unworthy of his realm. I know you want to help, Zora continued into the phone, turning to pace slowly in front of the store, but I need to handle this my way. She listened again, nodding slightly. Yes, darling. Elysium Beauty on Fifth Avenue, the flagship store. The manager's name is Alexander Whitfield. We'll discuss it when I get home. I'm going to walk for a bit, clear my head. I'll have Thomas pick me up at the cafe on 57th. A softer tone entered her voice. What? She paused, a small smile playing on her lips. I love you too. What Alexander Whitfield couldn't hear, what he couldn't possibly know as he smirked at the woman he had just humiliated, was that on the other end of that call was Ethan Reynolds, a man whose net worth exceeded the GDP of several small nations, a man whose love for his wife was matched only by his intolerance for injustice. As Zora walked away from Elysium Beauty, her steps measured and her head held high, Alexander Whitfield returned to his office, congratulating himself on maintaining the exclusivity of his domain. He had no way of knowing that he had just set in motion a chain of events that would teach him exactly what it costs to judge a book by its cover. The private elevator opened directly into the penthouse apartment. The Reynolds residence existed in a world far removed from the humiliation Zora had experienced hours earlier. Floor-to-ceiling windows captured the city skyline, while minimalist furnishings and warm neutrals created a home that was luxurious without being ostentatious. As Zora stepped into their living room, she found Ethan pacing, his phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing emphatically. At 38, Ethan Reynolds cut an impressive figure. 6'2", with the lean build of someone who made time for pre-dawn workouts despite running a global tech empire. I don't care what their quarterly projections are, he was saying, his voice controlled but vibrating with intensity. I want the store bought within the hour. He ended the call when he saw Zora crossing the room, and in 4 long strides, he was there to embrace her. These weren't the actions of a billionaire tech mogul known for disrupting industries. These were the movements of a husband seeing his wife in pain. I've already got my team looking into Elysium's corporate structure, he said, his hands gently framing her face. Thomas called me immediately after dropping you off. He saw everything through the window. Zora sighed, placing her hands over his. They kicked me out of the store, Ethan. They humiliated me in public because of the color of my skin. Each sentence was clipped, precise. It's not the first time I've experienced discrimination, Zora said, moving to the kitchen to pour herself a glass of water, and unfortunately, it won't be the last. But it should be, Ethan insisted, following her. That's the point. We have the resources to do something about it. Their dynamic in this moment revealed everything about their relationship. There was no power imbalance, no billionaire husband dictating to his wife. They moved through their shared space as equals, each respecting the other's perspective while holding their own ground. I will make that manager pay for his prejudice, Ethan said, his jaw tight. This isn't just about accountability. This is about justice. This isn't just about you, Zora. How many others have they humiliated who don't have our resources, who don't have a voice, who just have to swallow that humiliation and walk away? The question hung in the air between them. Zora's eyes softened as she recognized the deeper wound being exposed. This wasn't just about her experience at Elysium Beauty. This was about the 14-year-old Ethan being followed by security guards in department stores. This was about his mother being asked if she could afford the groceries in her cart. This was about generational pain that money couldn't erase. What exactly are you planning? Zora asked, watching Ethan's face carefully. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and took the call. Talk to me, Marcus, he said, putting the call on speaker out of respect for his wife. We've got a clear picture of their corporate structure, said the voice of his chief legal counsel. Elysium Beauty is owned by Pinnacle Luxury Group. They're publicly traded, but tightly controlled. There's a vulnerability, though. Their stock took a hit last quarter. We could acquire a controlling interest within days if we move aggressively. Ethan's eyes met Zora's. How quickly? If we start tonight, we could have majority ownership before they open tomorrow morning. The board won't know what hit them. Do it, Ethan said, his voice resolute. And Marcus, I want complete discretion. No one knows we're behind this until I say so. As he ended the call, Zora's expression revealed her conflicted feelings. She understood the impulse, the desire to create consequences for injustice. But something troubled her about the approach. Buying a company just to punish one manager seems excessive, she said carefully. Ethan took her hands in his. This isn't about punishment, Zora. This is about transformation. That store, that entire chain, exists in a bubble of exclusion and elitism. They built their brand on making people feel unworthy. They need to pay. Zora considered his words, her analytical mind already processing possibilities. You're not talking about destroying the brand? No, Ethan said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. We're taking over and we make it better. Exactly, Ethan said, his passion evident. We will fire all those who discriminated against you while employing someone better in its place. Soon, Alexander Whitfield would learn that the woman he had dismissed so casually was now effectively his boss. And that was just the beginning. This story is a powerful reminder that we all have a role to play in fighting injustice. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. And if you've ever experienced discrimination, please share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. That night, while most of New York City slept, Ethan Reynolds orchestrated a complex financial maneuver that would send shockwaves through the luxury retail industry. Working with his team of lawyers and financial advisors, he meticulously acquired a controlling interest in Pinnacle Luxury Group, the parent company of Elysium Beauty. Each transaction was carefully planned and executed to avoid detection, keeping the board of directors completely in the dark. By the time the sun began to rise over Manhattan, Ethan Reynolds was the majority shareholder of Pinnacle Luxury Group, and Elysium Beauty was effectively under his control. The next morning dawned bright and clear, casting a golden light on the bustling streets of Fifth Avenue. But this was no ordinary day. This was the day that Alexander Whitfield's world would be turned upside down. At precisely 9:58 a.m., 2 minutes before Elysium Beauty was scheduled to open, a gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb. Not just any Phantom, this was the extended model in anthracite, with mandarin leather interior, a vehicle so exclusive that a year's waiting list was considered expedited delivery. The uniformed driver, the same Thomas who had witnessed Zora's humiliation the day before, emerged with military precision to open the rear door. Before the gathered staff could process this arrival, a second, identical Rolls-Royce pulled up behind the first. Same model, same color. This wasn't just an arrival, this was a statement. From the first vehicle emerged Zora Phoenix. Gone was yesterday's casual attire. Today, she wore a precisely tailored white pantsuit that seemed to capture and reflect the morning light. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, accented with a single gold pin. No flashy jewelry, no obvious designer logos, just the unmistakable confidence of a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she was worth. A tourist nearby raised his phone to capture a photo, assuming she must be a celebrity. In many ways, he wasn't wrong. From his second Rolls-Royce stepped Ethan Reynolds. His charcoal suit was custom-made, but deliberately understated. His presence commanding without being showy. The power couple stood for a moment on the sidewalk, a tableau of quiet authority that stopped pedestrians in their tracks. Behind them, 4 black Escalades pulled up in perfect synchronization, forming a protective semicircle around the Rolls-Royces. From these emerged 12 individuals in business attire, men and women, with the focused expressions of people who closed billion-dollar deals before breakfast. Each carried a sleek leather portfolio embossed with the Reynolds Technologies logo. This wasn't a shopping trip. This was an operation. Inside Elysium Beauty, the staff had congregated near the windows, watching this procession with growing unease. The store wasn't scheduled to open for another 2 minutes, but several employees were already on the sales floor, pretending to adjust displays while stealing glances at the assembly outside. "Is that?" whispered one associate to another, her eyes wide. "It can't be," replied her colleague. "Why would Ethan Reynolds come here?" Yesterday's video of Zora being escorted out had circulated among employees overnight through a group chat, along with whispers about who she might really be. Some had dismissed the rumors as exaggeration. Others had spent sleepless nights worrying about potential fallout. Now, watching the unmistakable figure of the tech billionaire approach their doors. Those fears were crystallizing into certainty. Alexander Whitfield emerged from his office, alerted by the commotion. He straightened his tie and plastered on the practice smile he reserved for VIP clients, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes but served to convey the exclusivity of Elysian beauty. He'd dealt with celebrities and business titans before. This was his domain, and he was determined to maintain control. Places everyone, he instructed crisply. Whoever they are, they're still customers. A young sales associate, Bethany, approached him hesitantly. Mr. Whitfield, I think that might be Mr. Ethan Reynolds, the billionaire. I know exactly who that is. He cut her off, though his expression suggested otherwise. Now, get to your station. As the doors opened precisely at 10 a.m., Zora entered first, her steps measured and deliberate. The click of her heels on the marble floor echoed through the suddenly silent store. Behind her came Ethan, his expression unreadable, and then the procession of business professionals who spread out with practiced efficiency, taking positions throughout the store like chess pieces being strategically placed. Alexander's coffee cup crashed to the floor. "No," he whispered, the blood draining from his face. "No, it can't be." But it was. And as the entourage of serious-looking executives in tailored suits followed behind them, Alexander began to shake visibly. The woman he'd humiliated and thrown out yesterday wasn't just any customer. She was Zora Phoenix, wife of Ethan Reynolds. Remember, if you believe in justice and second chances, hit that like button and subscribe. "Mrs. Reynolds," he stammered, his face draining of color so rapidly it was as if someone had pulled a plug. "I had no idea we would have, of course, extended our premier client services had we known." A murmur rippled through the staff. Several pulled out their phones, checking social media profiles, connecting dots they should have connected yesterday. "That's why her ring looked so expensive," one whispered to another. The security guard who had physically removed Zora the previous day, Kendrick according to his name badge, emerged from the back room, stopping dead when he recognized her. His expression transformed from professional neutrality to naked fear in an instant. He had handled many challenging situations in his security career, but never one with stakes this high. "Mr. Whitfield," he said urgently, approaching Alexander. "There's something you should know." "Not now, Kendrick," Alexander hissed, still trying to recover his composure, to find some way to navigate out of the catastrophe he sensed was unfolding. "The point," Ethan continued, addressing everyone now, his voice carrying to every corner of the store, "is that yesterday my wife was discriminated against in this establishment because of her race. She was publicly humiliated, physically manhandled, and escorted out of a store where she intended to spend over $20,000. He paused, letting the amount sink in. Several sales associates exchanged alarmed glances. That kind of sale would have been among the largest of the month, with commissions that could have paid a significant portion of their rent in Manhattan's punishing real estate market. "But we're not here to spend money today," Ethan continued, removing his sunglasses and tucking them into his breast pocket. "We're here for something else entirely." The tension in the room was palpable now. A water glass shattered as a nervous employee knocked it off a counter, the sound like a gunshot in the hushed space. Ethan nodded to one of his team members, a sharp-featured woman with close-cropped silver hair. She stepped forward and handed Alexander a folder with the Reynolds Holdings logo embossed on its cover. "What's this?" Alexander asked, his attempt at authority undermined by the slight tremor in his hands as he accepted the document. A drop of sweat traced a path from his temple down his jawline. "Ownership transfer papers," Ethan said simply. As of 4:30 this morning, Reynolds Holdings acquired a controlling interest in Pinnacle Luxury Group, the parent company of Elysian Beauty. The room froze. Even the ambient music that had been playing softly in the background seemed to pause in shock. Alexander's mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. He flipped through the documents with trembling fingers, scanning legal language that confirmed his worst fears. This wasn't a prank or an empty threat. This was a corporate takeover executed with military precision. That's impossible, he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper before strengthening with desperation. Elysium has 50 stores worldwide. The brand is valued at over $1 billion. The board would never. The board wasn't given a choice, interrupted the silver-haired woman. We acquired 63% of outstanding shares through a series of transactions executed overnight. The board was notified 30 minutes ago. Ethan's smile contained no warmth. I could have bought 500 stores, Mr. Whitfield. Your entire company represents less than 2% of my net worth. The implications of this statement rippled through the room. The staff were no longer looking at a customer they might impress or dismiss. They were looking at their new owner, an owner who had witnessed their behavior firsthand. An employee near the back began quietly crying, while a third edged toward the exit before being intercepted by one of Ethan's team members. No one is leaving. Not yet. Now, Ethan said, checking his watch, not an ostentatious timepiece, but a simple, elegant design that likely cost more than most of the staff earned in a year. I believe the store opens to the public in exactly 1 minute. Before that happens, I need everyone to gather around. We're having an emergency meeting. As if choreographed, Ethan's team spread throughout the store, gently but firmly directing all employees toward the center of the main floor. There was no resistance. The shock was too complete, the display of power too overwhelming. Sales associates, stock personnel, security, everyone formed a nervous semicircle around Ethan and Zora. Alexander stood frozen in place, the folder clutched in his hands, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. Yesterday, he had exercised what he believed was his authority to remove an unwelcome presence from his exclusive domain. Today, he was discovering that the woman he had dismissed so casually now effectively owned everything around him, including his career. Zora's expression remained neutral, but those who looked closely might have noticed the slight lift at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile of triumph, but the quiet satisfaction of justice about to be served. As the staff gathered in their nervous semicircle, the atmosphere in Elysium Beauty had transformed completely. The temple of exclusivity was about to be remade, and not a single luxury item would be sold today. Instead, something far more valuable was about to be exchanged. A lesson in humility, consequences, and the true meaning of power. Ethan placed his hand gently on the small of Zora's back, not possessively, but supportively, a gesture that spoke volumes about their relationship. This wasn't a husband acting alone. This was a partnership, a united front facing injustice together. Let me be clear about something, Ethan said, his voice carrying throughout the now silent store. What's about to happen isn't just about yesterday's incident. It's about a pattern of behavior that ends today. Alexander's face had gone from pale to gray. The realization that not only was he in trouble for how he treated the wife of a billionaire, but that billionaire now owned the company, caused him to sway on his feet. "You're fired," Ethan stated, the words landing like a death sentence. "Effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings." "No, please," Alexander begged, all pretense of dignity gone. "This store is my life. I've been here 12 years. Zora, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. 12 years of judging people by their appearance rather than their character. 12 years of deciding who belongs and who doesn't based on your prejudices. Alexander looked frantically around the room, seeking allies, finding none. The same staff who had followed his example yesterday now avoided his gaze, already calculating their own survival in this new reality. The front doors were locked by one of Ethan's team members, the blinds lowered electronically, casting the store in a more subdued light. Outside, confused customers began to gather, peering through the gaps in the blinds at the unusual scene unfolding inside. Alexander Whitfield, who had built his career on making others feel small, suddenly understood what it felt like to lose all power in an instant. He had judged Zora by her appearance and found her wanting. Now, he would be judged by his actions, and the verdict was already written on the faces of everyone around him. The reckoning had arrived. The gleaming main floor of Elysium Beauty had been transformed in minutes. Display cases were pushed aside, making room for rows of chairs where confused employees now sat. At the front, Ethan's team had set up a large projection screen and a podium. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a tribunal. Alexander sat in the front row, his earlier confidence shattered, his face ashen. Though no longer store manager, he'd been instructed to remain for what was to come. Occasionally, he glanced at the exit, but two security personnel, Ethan's security, not his stood watch. There would be no escape from what was about to unfold. Ethan stepped to the podium, his expression grave. No longer the enraged husband, he now embodied the calculated precision of a CEO who had built an empire by seeing problems others missed and fixing them decisively. For those who don't know me, I'm Ethan Reynolds. As of this morning, I am the majority shareholder of Pinnacle Luxury Group, which makes me your new boss. But before we discuss the future, we need to address the past. He nodded to a member of his team, who dimmed the lights and started a presentation. On the screen appeared a series of graphs and charts, customer demographic data from Elysium's 50 locations worldwide. My team spent the night analyzing your customer data. What we found was disturbing. Despite operating in diverse cities around the world, Elysium's customer base is 92% white. But that's not the result of natural market forces. The screen changed to show security footage, carefully selected clips from stores across the country. In each, the pattern was identical. White customers greeted warmly, customers of color ignored or followed suspiciously. This isn't coincidence, Ethan continued. It's a policy, unwritten, but systematically enforced through hiring, training, and leadership examples. Then came the footage from yesterday. The entire store watched as Zora entered Elysium, was deliberately ignored, and then approached by Alexander. Every dismissive comment, every contemptuous look played out in high definition. When it reached the moment security physically removed her, audible gasps filled the room. Throughout the screening, Zora stood beside Ethan, her posture perfect, her expression dignified. She wasn't hiding from the humiliation. She was reclaiming the narrative. When the lights came up, Alexander was shaking, his forehead beaded with sweat. It was a misunderstanding, he stammered, rising to his feet. We get so many people who just come in to take pictures and never buy anything. We have to protect our brand exclusivity. Brand exclusivity, Ethan repeated, his voice cold. Let's talk about what that really means at Elysium. Let's hear from your other victims. At his signal, the doors opened. 5 individuals entered, different ages, different backgrounds, but all people of color. They took seats on a panel at the front, facing the employees. A distinguished older black woman spoke first. I'm Dr. Eleanor Jenkins, Chief of Neurosurgery at Mount Sinai. 3 months ago, I came to purchase gifts for my surgical team. I was told the items were probably out of my price range and that there was a discount shop down the street. Next, a young South Asian man in a tailored suit. Raj Patel, hedge fund manager. I was followed by security during my entire visit last month, despite spending over $30,000 on gifts for clients. A Latina woman, elegant in her 50s. Maria Gonzalez, state Supreme Court judge. I was asked if I was looking for the employee entrance. With each testimony, the employees' expressions changed from shock to shame. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was systemic. But Ethan wasn't finished. 3 more people entered, former Elysium employees who had left or been fired after raising concerns about discriminatory practices. I was told to prioritize customers who look like they can afford our products, said one former sales associate. The training never explicitly mentioned race, but the examples made it clear who was considered a priority. Another testified, I received lower commissions because I was assigned to help customers my manager didn't think would make large purchases, almost always people of color. As the testimonials continued, Alexander seemed to physically shrink in his chair. When it was his turn to respond, his arrogance had dissolved completely. Please, he begged, his voice cracking. I have a family to support, a mortgage, children in private school. Ethan's response was measured but relentless. So did many qualified applicants you rejected based on their skin color? People with degrees, experience, and talent who never got past the interview because they didn't fit your brand image. Your family won't suffer, unlike the families of those you've discriminated against. They'll simply have to adjust to a lifestyle built on years of systematic exclusion coming to an end. He turned to address the entire staff, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent room. Effective immediately, Elysium Beauty is closed worldwide for restructuring. All 50 locations will shut down as of noon today. Panic rippled through the room. A senior sales associate, Veronica, according to her name tag, rushed forward. "You can't do this," she cried. "I've been with Elysium for 7 years. I have sales goals, clients who rely on me." "Did Mrs. Harrington rely on you yesterday?" Ethan asked quietly, "when you rushed to serve her while ignoring my wife." He paused, his voice softer but no less impactful. "Your employment record shows a clear pattern of selective service." Veronica turned to Zora, desperation in her eyes. "Please, I didn't know who you were." And that was the moment Zora finally spoke, her voice carrying a quiet authority that silenced the room more effectively than any shout could have. "That's precisely the problem," she said, stepping forward. "You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me with basic dignity. You judge me by my appearance, not my character. That's a mistake you only get to make once." She surveyed the room, making eye contact with each employee. "Some of you will have the opportunity to reapply after our restructuring. Those who treated all customers with respect, regardless of their perceived status, may find a place in the new organization. The rest of you will receive 2-week severance. Consider a time to reflect on how you want to show up in the world going forward." As security began escorting shell-shocked employees out, Ethan's team distributed envelopes containing termination papers and severance information. The precision of the operation made it clear this wasn't an impulse reaction. This had been meticulously planned overnight. Alexander remained frozen in his seat, the last vestige of his power and privilege stripped away in less than an hour. The store that had been his kingdom now felt like a prison, with each luxury item a testament to the exclusive world he had helped build and would now be excluded from. "This isn't just about one bad day or one bad manager," Ethan said as the room emptied. "This is about dismantling a culture built on exclusion and rebuilding something better in its place." As the last employees filed out, Zora stood in the center of the empty store, surrounded by products designed to enhance beauty while the company's practices had been profoundly ugly. The transformation had begun, and in the luxury retail world, nothing would ever be quite the same. 6 months can change everything. The same Fifth Avenue storefront that had been Elysium Beauty was transformed inside and out. Gone were the intimidating glass barriers and exclusive atmosphere. In their place stood a welcoming facade with a new name emblazoned in elegant gold lettering, Legacy. The store had been rebranded, and the grand reopening drew crowds that stretched for blocks. Fashion magazines, business publications, and social media influencers jostled for position as the doors prepared to open. This wasn't just another luxury store launch. This was a revolution in the making. Standing at the center of it all was Zora Phoenix, no longer the customer who had been humiliated and removed, but the newly appointed creative director of the entire Legacy brand. Her vision had reshaped not just one store, but all 50 locations worldwide. "We're creating something that has never existed before," Zora explained to the assembled press. "Luxury without exclusion. Exceptional quality available to anyone who values it, regardless of how they look or what assumptions others might make about them." The ribbon cutting revealed an interior that maintained the beauty of fine craftsmanship while eliminating the intimidation factor. Display cases were accessible rather than fortress-like. Price tags were clearly visible, still eye-watering amounts for luxury items, but no longer hidden as if discussing cost was vulgar. And most strikingly, the staff reflected the diversity of the city itself. The team behind the counters and on the sales floor included people of all backgrounds, ages, and body types, a stark contrast to the homogeneous staff of the former Elysium. Each wore a name tag that included not just their name, but the languages they spoke, creating immediate connection points for international customers. Meanwhile, across town in a discount cosmetics chain, a very different scene was unfolding. Alexander Whitfield, once the imperious manager of Elysium's flagship store, now wore the red vest of Value Beauty. His customer of the moment, a young black woman, was asking detailed questions about foundation shades. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his once haughty voice now carefully deferential. "We have 16 shades designed for deeper skin tones. Would you like to try some samples?" The irony wasn't lost on anyone familiar with his story, which had become a cautionary tale throughout the retail industry. From gatekeeper of luxury to service provider for the masses, a transition made necessary by the fact that no high-end retailer would touch his resume after what had happened at Elysium. Back at Legacy, the transformation went far deeper than aesthetics. In the training room behind the main floor, new employees participated in a comprehensive program on unconscious bias, led by Zora herself. Luxury has traditionally been defined by exclusion, she explained to the attentive group. The value is created by keeping people out. We're flipping that model. Our luxury is defined by inclusion, by creating exceptional experiences for every client who walks through those doors. The training wasn't superficial. It included role-playing scenarios, data analysis of service patterns, and personal reflection. Every employee, from stock clerks to senior management, went through the same process. "We don't expect perfection," Zora told them. "We expect awareness and growth." In his office overlooking the store floor, Ethan Reynolds sat for a rare interview about the brand's transformation. "Legacy isn't just a name," he explained, gesturing to the activity below. "It's about what we leave behind. Every business makes an imprint on society. For too long, luxury retail has reinforced harmful hierarchies and exclusion. We're demonstrating that there's another way, one that's not just more ethical, but more profitable." The financial reports backed his claim. In just 6 months, Legacy had exceeded the former Elysium sales figures by 34%. The customer base had diversified dramatically while still maintaining the high-end shoppers who had previously frequented the store. With the Reynolds backing, Legacy had become the first Black-owned global luxury retail chain in history, a fact that made headlines in the business world and sent shockwaves through an industry that had operated on unchanged principles for decades. Perhaps most significant was the launch of the Legacy New Designers Initiative. In a dedicated studio space above the flagship store, Zora personally mentored 10 designers from underprivileged backgrounds each year, providing resources, business training, and eventually a platform to sell their creations. "Talent exists everywhere," she explained. "Opportunity doesn't. We're bridging that gap." Among the first cohort was Bethany, the former Elysium employee who had tried to intervene when Zora was being removed. Her small collection of handcrafted skincare products based on her Jamaican grandmother's recipes now occupied a special display near the entrance. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, a young woman entered Legacy. Her clothes were simple but neat, her manner hesitant as she looked around at the luxury surroundings. In the old days, she might have been ignored or followed suspiciously. Instead, she was greeted warmly by staff who made no assumptions about her ability to purchase. As she lingered by a display of skincare products, visibly calculating whether she could afford them, Zora approached, not as the creative director, but as someone who recognized a younger version of herself. "That serum changed my life," she said, pointing to the product the young woman was considering. "I'd be happy to give you a sample to try before you decide." The conversation that followed wasn't about making a sale. It was about connection, about seeing someone fully. Before the young woman left, Zora handed her a brochure for the New Designers Initiative. "You mentioned you're studying chemistry," she said. "We're looking for formulators with fresh perspectives. Think about applying." As the store prepared to close that evening, Zora gathered the staff for their daily reflection, a practice she had instituted from day one. "True luxury isn't what you own," she told them, her words becoming the unofficial mantra of the brand. "It's creating space for everyone to shine." Today, how did you help someone shine? The legacy of that one moment of discrimination had become something no one could have predicted, a complete reimagining of what luxury could be in the modern world. The statistics told the story that traditional retail had claimed was impossible. Legacy's workforce was now 73% people of color, with 68% of management positions held by women and minorities. Employee satisfaction scores were 92% positive. Customer demographics had expanded to reflect the actual population of the cities where the stores operated. Most telling of all, revenues were up across all metrics, proving that inclusion wasn't just right, it was smart business. The luxury retail industry was being forced to follow suit, with competing brands scrambling to diversify their staff and rethink exclusionary practices. What had begun as one woman being judged by her appearance had catalyzed a movement that was reshaping an entire industry. All because Zora Phoenix and Ethan Reynolds understood that sometimes justice isn't just about consequences for wrongdoing. It's about creating something better from the ashes of what was wrong. Thank you for watching this story. We hope it inspired you to think about the power of justice and the importance of creating a more inclusive world. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. And don't forget to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Click on the next video to keep watching, and we'll see you next time. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? That should be the complete story now. Please let me know if you notice any further issues.